Hi, everybody. So I am here for a special podcast that I'm doing. I just posted my review in my Disney Canon series of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I knew it would be pretty controversial because it is a very well-regarded film amongst the Disney fandom. And my friend, sorry. So my friend Christy, she suggested that she wanted to talk to me about it, and I am always open for a conversation and to discuss the pros and cons of a film and hopefully get to appreciate it a little bit more. So, Christy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Christine, and I run a channel called It's fine. I used to go by Christy, so you're not wrong. I run a channel called See Tyler Vision, and right now it's mostly videos of me and my family traveling, but I actually want to do videos of me doing book and movie reviews, but I am actually like really, really camera shy, so it's just really good for me.
Well, I'm so excited. I love your channel, and you have a lot of adventures living in Japan, right?
Yeah.
Now you're in Denver or Colorado?
Yes. Yeah, we're in Colorado now.
That's awesome. Yeah, so definitely I'll put a link down to her channel in the description section. And I thought what we could do first is kind of talk about sort of our experiences with the film, maybe when you first saw it, what you think about it now as an adult, all of that kind of thing. So when I first saw it, I didn't see it in the theater because I was going to school and or I think going to community college at the time, and I don't know, it just didn't really appeal to me that much, and I didn't see it until it was out on VHS. And I was babysitting with a friend, her nephews, and we put it on, and I was just so shocked. I had these little ones, there, and here they're singing about lust and wanting to be with this woman, and they're burning a family alive, and they're, all Paris is, and this woman dies in the first 5 minutes, and it was completely shocking. And so for a long time, this was my least favorite Disney film, if you'd asked me. I hadn't seen a lot of the bad ones, but this was my least favorite for a long time, and because of that experience. And also I felt like these kids were completely uninterested in it. Like it didn't engage them at all. And so that was my initial experience. As an adult, because I did have a lot of people say, oh, it's so great, it's so great, it's so great. And so I tried to kind of look at it through adult eyes. And as an adult, it frustrates me on a different level because I feel like they had an opportunity to make an animated film for adults, and I feel like they wimped out. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, I feel the same way about The Black Cauldron as I feel about Hunchback of Notre Dame. Because both of them are artistically pretty, I think. I think that they make interesting choices in the animation. I think they both were trying something different. They're both trying something bold, but they lacked the courage of their convictions. And so it ends up becoming very uneven and frustrating for me. And I just wish, like I said in my review, I wish I could see the R-rated cut of this movie. And I wish the same thing for Black Cauldron, to be honest. Because I feel like, I don't know, the attempt to sort of appeal to kids didn't work, first of all, as I'm saying with my friends, nephews, and it just ruins it for me. I have a hard time. And so that's sort of where I'm coming from, it that I just feel like it fundamentally fails at what it's trying to do. And that frustrates me. Mm-hmm. So that's me. What about you? You had a very different experience.
Yeah, but I totally hear you, and I'm so excited we get to talk about it. So for me, I do remember watching it in theaters when I was 11 years old, and I just remember, you know, like the opening shots and that incredible choir and just being like, this is amazing. And I just got so immediately excited. And that opening for me, tonally is just, it's one of my favorite things Disney has ever created. Like the first 5 minutes of Hunchback. And I, as a kid, of course, I wasn't like, wait a second, why would the Archdeacon have Frollo adopt Quasimodo? That doesn't make any sense. I was just like, yeah, okay. Because I mean, most Disney movies are going to give you this like really far out premise anyway. So it was almost like kind of got caught up in the fantasy expectation of it. I was just kind of like, I'm going to buy whatever you tell me in the first 5 minutes. But then as the movie continued, I was just like blown away. First off, the only Disney heroine that had black hair, and I had really black hair when I was a kid. The only Disney heroine that had black hair was Snow White. And so whenever I played the princess games with my sisters or whatever, I had to be Snow White, and I hated Snow White. And so it was like Esmeralda has black hair and green eyes, and I had black hair and green eyes, and I was like, oh my gosh, like this is it, I finally get a princess. And then she turns out to be like awesome, and she was just so powerful and strong and outspoken, and I just imprinted on her, as I said in my comment on your video. And then I was a really weird kid, and I have always had this personality where it's like, give me something fun and familiar, but then turn it at an angle just a little bit and ask me what I think now, and I'm gonna be a huge fan. And so I felt like someone had given me something really familiar, but they were kind of turning it for me. And when Frollo started singing that Hellfire song, and I'm 11 years old, I'm sitting in my seat and I'm like, this is the best Disney movie I have ever been to. I am the luckiest kid in the world. I just couldn't get enough of it. And I think that, you know, as what was I picking up there? Like, how sexual did it seem to me? I think for like a little prepubescent Christine, I was picking up on enough, but it certainly didn't feel explicit, but I definitely could tell, okay, like, yeah, something's going down here. Like this is not kid stuff. And I think that increased the appeal to me. So after the movie came out, I was like so nuts about this movie. This isn't just a movie where I'm like, oh yeah, I want to talk about Hunchback because I love it. Like it's good. It's like, no, this is it. This is the Disney movie for me. And I like the merchandise in all those commercials, and like I had that, and I had that, and I had that, and I had more than one Esmeralda Barbie. I had a Esmeralda doll collection where I would collect every Esmeralda doll I could get my hands on, posters and everything. So I think that this movie hit at a really formative time in my life, and I think that it put a lot of things in perspective for me. I think that I got a lot of ideas even about like sexuality from this movie, religion from this movie, hypocrisy from this movie. And as a kid, it introduced these ideas of questioning a lot of this, questioning our reactions to attraction, you know, like with Phoebus versus Frollo, things like that. Anyway, I'm not going to ramble forever.
We're going to talk about a lot of those things. This is going to be really good. I do have it looks like we have some viewers. If you're watching, I do have the Q&A open. If you have questions that you'd like to ask, feel free. So yeah, that's so great. I mean, I love when people love movies. So even if it's not one that I particularly responded to, and like I said, I don't hate this movie. It just frustrates me because I feel like it could have been so much better. And so, you know, that's why this is not a Chicken Little. We're not talking about a movie that's a total train wreck. You know, like I gave it a C-. Like I said, I gave The Black Cauldron a C- as well, because I just feel like both tried to do something different. I see the artistry. It's not like I'm miserable watching them. But I just feel like for a lot of people, I see this in top 10 lists, and I can't go there because I just feel like it frustrates me because it doesn't go all the way. And so anyway, so we're going to talk about some of the things that We're going to talk about some things you mentioned. And, we're going to start off that, have you ever read the novel?
I have not.
Okay. So they do make some major changes from the novel. And, of course, every adaptation does. But I think that they made one big one that really hurts the movie. Because they didn't want, I mentioned this in my review, they didn't want to offend the Catholic Church.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I said they didn't go all the way. They just weren't brave enough. And so they decide to make Frollo a judge instead of making him an archdeacon. And that just, it doesn't make any sense. Like, so you've got this introductory scene where Frollo chases Quasimodo's mother to the footsteps of the church. And then she dies. She's dead. And the archdeacon sees that she's dead. And he's about to drown Quasimodo in the well. A baby. I mean, this is a baby. and in the book, it makes so much more sense because he is the archdeacon. So, yes, you can have a member of a clergy that is very twisted and hiding this and lying, but to have the archdeacon then say, not only are you not going to be prosecuted for killing this woman, but you have to now be the kind of the caretaker or the father of this child that you're just about to drown. Like, that makes no sense to me at all. And I think it makes the church look even worse because here they are an enabler instead of having a bad apple. They know about the bad apple and they are encouraging it and they are enabling it. And, so that's kind of, so you love that intro. So explain to me why you love that and why that doesn't bother you.
Yeah. So, I kind of mentioned that the archdeacon giving the baby to Frollo to raise as his own, like, as soon as you said that in your video, I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't make any sense. And if I had watched this movie now, or even at a college age for the first time, something I definitely would have picked up on. But because I was used to overlooking it, I just absolutely didn't grab my attention. I think the reason that I like that intro so much isn't so much for that moment, but the build up to it. The lyrics to this song, I actually really, really love. I feel like it's written well. It's rhythmically really lovely. The visuals themselves and the whole tone is so fun and so powerful. And even the moment where the archdeacon, it goes, "Stop!" cried the archdeacon, and then the lightning flashes and there's some confetti and it's Clopin telling the story, which is, I think, as we get into what went wrong, one of the things that makes me sad that didn't continue throughout the movie. Clopin is telling the story in the beginning, and then they're like two very small bookends. You could barely even tell he's still touring the story at the end. Yeah. So I think they kind of missed out there. But on top of that, it's the pacing, I feel, is very good and very interesting. I feel like it just really captivates you right off the bat. And as far as Disney intros go, I'm like holding this pen. I don't know why. But as far as Disney intros go, I feel like it just slaughters in comparison to these like book opening, once upon a time, there was a man and a woman who wanted a daughter very much. So I guess
I can see that.
Yeah, for me, it slays in comparison.
I mean, it is somewhat similar to your Lion King kind of intro where it's just, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Oh, and then, okay. So sorry, because Hunchback, I cry. I watched it today just so I could see it again before we talked about it. And I still cried probably 4 or 5 times while watching this movie. And even when Clopin hits that very last note of the intro, when they repeat, the bells, 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 and then he's like, bells of Notre, and then he just hits it, and you're like, that is a male singer. And like, I know they don't have castrati anymore.
Yeah.
But however you did that is amazing. That note makes me cry.
Is great. There's no doubt. I think that even the Gargoyles, I don't like their song. I don't think it works. But the voices are fine. Like they sing fine, and all the voices, all the songs are well performed. Mm-hmm. I'll give you that. I think, yeah. and I think it's some of Alan Menken's best writing as far as the score, and I think that some of the songs are nice. Some of them, as far as Stephen Schwartz lyrics, some of them I don't think are as strong as you do, but I can totally see that appeal. It definitely starts with a bang for sure, and it definitely, you know, if you're gonna get drawn in to the type of movie, it does say right away this is kind of the type of story we're gonna tell. Yeah. So I do appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And let's talk about. So I didn't even know the gypsy's name. What's the name that you said? The guy who's telling the story.
It's spelled Clopin. So some people say Clopin, but in the movie himself, he calls himself Clopin. And among like diehard fans, he's like
favorite. I love it.
He's not my personal favorite, but there was definitely a Clopin phase in there for me.
That's awesome. I mean, one of the problems that I have with the movie is that I feel like the gypsies are really confusing as far as tone, because sometimes they're presented as antagonists, sometimes they're brutal, they're mean. They try to hang our heroes, you know, at a certain time. They are very mean to Quasimodo, and yet we're supposed to sort of buy them as this sort of persecuted minority. We're supposed to be rooting for them. He's the narrator, you know, at a certain point. And I find that kind of a problem. I don't know. So you really like this character. Does that at all? Like
So for me, it's actually, I have the opposite feeling about that, but I feel like you're right that they did do that, that they do act as antagonists at some points, and they are very gray. And I actually prefer that over, say, like the depiction of Native Americans in Pocahontas, where, and I don't want to, like, I don't know, I do not want to make an apologist history of anything. I don't want to condone anything.
I'm not a Pocahontas fan, so don't hesitate.
But
I gave that a D-. So,
but like, what are the reasons that people struggle, you know, with oppressed minorities? Like, if everybody just immediately was like, hey, like, you know, these people are angels, they're perfect, they haven't done anything wrong, and then they never do anything wrong, there's no retaliation, there's no rise up against their oppression, if there's no defensiveness, no secretiveness, it would be simple, and they wouldn't be human anymore. And with Pocahontas, you know, it's very much that. It's just like, you know, the white guys come in and they ruin everything, and you know, and in many ways it's true. Absolutely, there's an imbalance of power throughout history, so I'm not going to make excuses for that. But I like the fact that you can see how the oppression of the gypsies, and I know that that's a pejorative term, but they don't call them Romani in the movie, so we're going to call them gypsies.
That's true.
But you can see how their oppression has affected them, how they have become a secretive people, and a people who have to get what they want by covert means. And the thing is I love that because it plays into the way that we feel about people today. I mean, I even have friends. My mother-in-law was robbed by gypsies in Egypt. I had a sister who served a mission in France, and she would meet Romani people in France. And meeting people like that can be very complex, because you see the oppression. There was a history of slavery with the Romani people, just incredible injustices done to them. And yet, if we could all just see that as black and white, I think the solution would be solved very quickly. But it's not black and white. It can be hard for people to anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, no,
and
it's
so
an interesting
like,
point of view for sure.
yeah,
You know,
so I
the
like
idea
they
that
change that.
that they aren't that they aren't shown as being sort of this perfect minority. I hadn't thought of it that way. That's an interesting perspective. I maybe if they had like had a few more moments of warmth with the group as a whole, because I feel like you do get a sense of fun with them, I guess. And you get an eye into them with Esmeralda, but maybe if there was like one more moment of sort of humanity, I think maybe that might help me a little bit more.
Yep.
Than with them as a group. I just feel like they end up coming, and maybe if they just weren't quite so mean to Quasi, maybe, like, I don't know, then I maybe would warm up to them a little bit more. But it's definitely, I hadn't thought of it quite that way. So that's why it's good we have these kind of conversations. One of the problems that I have with the movie is I feel like it has a fractured protagonist. And you have, particularly between Quasimodo and Esmeralda, the movie can't quite decide who is the lead protagonist in the story. And you have long sections where Quasimodo isn't even in the movie, where it's either about Phoebus or whether it's about Esmeralda, and you have long sections where Esmeralda's not in it. And so to me, that's a little bit frustrating because I want to really get to know these characters, but because I keep getting kind of, moved around, that to me is a problem. Who do you think the movie is really about?
So I kind of view it as a shared point of view. And from what I can count there, we've got 4. We have scenes where it's from Quasi's perspective, Esmeralda's perspective, Phoebus's perspective, and Frollo's perspective. Hellfire is entirely from Frollo's perspective. And I was going to bring this up with one of the things that I liked about the opening, but I think, and we don't have multiple points of view in very many Disney movies. As far as I can think of off the top of my head. But the movie to me is achieving a really interesting multi-level effect.
Think of like Frozen, kind of does.
Does it? Oh, you're right.
Yeah, because you got Anna and Elsa.
Yeah. But it has this multi-level effect where like Quasimodo is occupying this space that is essentially the sky. Like Quasimodo occupies the sky. And throughout the movie, you'll see it as like a heaven motif. And Phoebus and Frollo occupy the ground. They occupy the world of men. And the world of men is this, corrupt and twisted place where like all of this crazy stuff happens. And Esmeralda is actually on a sub-level, which I think was really interesting for them to do because the gypsies have been made into subhuman people by their society. And so the gypsies reside in the Court of Miracles. Esmeralda resides undercover for the majority of the movie. And even the opening of the movie, when it introduces you to Quasimodo's parents, they are under the docks. And they're already in this very low place. And so I think the movie moves from character to character because it's taking this interplay of these different motifs. And so, for instance, at the beginning of the movie, Quasimodo, he meets Esmeralda, and he calls her this angel. He has this whole song about how she represents heaven's light, and yet she comes from the sub-world that Frollo is calling hell. And then she moves up into this space. And so then you see all these scenes where the characters are moving in and out of these geographical levels and playing with our idea of where they belong. And so for me, that's why I enjoy the multiple points of view, because I feel like it's useful to see all of these perspectives intertwining and creating a larger story.
Do you think that all of them get served though? Well, like I don't feel like any of them really get served out as the fully fleshed out characters that I really know and know their story. And I don't know, I feel like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and watching your video, I really started thinking about that. I was like, are these characters underdeveloped? Who's more developed than others? And one of the characters that you mentioned was Phoebus.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the places where I was like, okay, I got to think about this. Is he? And I really thought about it. And I was like, I was doing this interview to myself last night until about 3 a.m. I just couldn't stop getting out of my head. Anyway,
I hope I haven't poked holes in your movie, but because I like plenty of movies that aren't perfect too. So don't feel like I like Frozen, and I love Frozen, and I know that's not perfect. But yeah, no, that's funny.
Yeah,
but Phoebus, part of the problem I think is they give him Kevin Kline as the voice, and I hear that voice and I think comedic. I think he's a comedy, like to me, and so like that's partly maybe my own weakness there, but I then he has asked to do these really like brave things.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to, and yet he's also a romantic lead, and so I don't know, like I just feel like I wish the movie was about him, or I wish the movie was about Esmeralda, or I wish the movie was about, because I think like with Esmeralda, I think that her song God Help the Outcast, which is a beautiful song, would be so much more meaningful if I really felt like I knew her. Knew maybe her history, what she's going through, and why she's dancing, and why she had to resort to that, or maybe she feels empowered by it. I don't know her, so I don't know.
Well, I'm going to go back to Phoebus.
Yeah.
And throw out a little thesis here and say that I think Phoebus is actually the best developed, most moral male character that any Disney movie has ever given. And this is why.
Bold statement.
It is a bold statement.
Okay.
And I think one of the things that okay, I got to organize my thoughts here.
We do have, while you're organizing your thoughts, we do have a comment. I'll just read that. Castor Troy is his name, and it says, I clicked on this video because I am researching Disney. Also, I am a real gypsy, and it's okay to call us gypsies. So
cool beans.
There you go. Sweet. Thank you for your comment.
Yeah, thank you. So with, I'm going to go ahead and start on my little theorem first. Then
all right. I love it.
We can talk about Phoebus after if we'll need to. But every Disney movie that I can think of, the protagonists have really self-serving goals. They want to be free, they want legs, they want to get away from their mom, they want a man, they don't want a man. It's all about them. And with Esmeralda, of course, we get this massive song where she's, oh, God help the outcast, the poor and downtrodden, everything. And it's beautiful, it's moving, and we hear her say that. But the thing is this comes after she has already shown a very brave amount of compassion to Quasimodo. So we see her put this into action. And Phoebus, he's really fun because, okay, so you mentioned in your video, you're like, oh, we didn't get to hear anything about the Miller's family. Like, we don't even know the Miller's family. And this could have been so much more meaningful if we had known them. But I thought, but every Disney movie has people saving people because they're either attracted to them or they're friends with them or they're already very close to them. They have a reason to love that person. We have a reason to love that person. And if someone does something nice for a stranger, it's like Aladdin giving a scrap of bread to some little fellow street rats. And like, that's good, but he could steal another loaf of bread and he probably will. Like, he's not going to die. Mm-hmm. Phoebus is like, I don't know the Millers. I don't know their family. I don't know anything about them, but I can tell you that burning them alive is a moral wrong. And I'm going to not only turn down this command to kill them, but then when you do it anyway, I'm going to jump in through the window and I'm going to save the whole family and I'm going to get shot with an arrow and I'm almost going to drown in a river and then I'm going to lose my job and everyone thinks I'm dead. And it's like, you want an altruistic hero, like, the fact that he didn't know these people, the fact that they were strangers, and he gave his life for them anyway because he was going to be dead if Esmeralda hadn't gotten in and saved him. I
love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, to me, that's one of the most heroic things. And he has an arc, because at the very beginning, we see even the way that he falls in love with Esmeralda, at first he sees her, just dancing on the street for coins before the festival. And he's like, hey, she's cute. I like her dancing. I'm going to give her a coin, no big deal. He's not really committed at that point. He's not in love. And then we see her do her, little serious dance in the red dress that they like specially animated. And you're like, that dress is very tight. But anyway, she does that dance, and, he has that line where Frollo says, look at that disgusting display. And he's like, yes, sir, buys her up. And you kind of mentioned some of this in your review, where he was also ogling her along with Frollo. And then I saw in your comments, because I read like all the comments on this, I saw in the comments someone say like, well, yeah, they're both attracted to her, but they react to it in different ways. And you were like, okay, I see that.
Well, we're going to talk about that in just a sec, but I want to follow up kind of with what you're saying about him being kind of fighting for the everyman. I think it's a valid point. I hadn't thought of it quite that way. I think I still would have been more invested if I had known him a little bit better. Yeah. As a character. And so I think that the book is Quasimodo's story. It's about this character, this boy or whatever, this man who is manipulated by religion in order to in order to be afraid of the world. And you get a little bit of that, but it's so underserved, I feel like. And it's really about religion. Is the book is about, and you do get some of that, but I just feel like because they made the choice to not make him the Archdeacon, they couldn't, because they weren't willing to go all the way with that, then it just loses so much of its significance. But yeah, I mean, it's a totally interesting part. I was trying to think while you were talking, I could think of any other Disney characters that kind of fight for a character that they don't even know. The only one I can even think of is probably Timothy Q. Mouse in Dumbo.
That's funny. Yeah.
He fights for Dumbo, even though because people are making fun of Dumbo. But that's probably a stretch. But it was the only one I could think of.
Yeah,
it's an interesting perspective for sure.
Yeah, and even Quasi has this moment where he needs to go save Esmeralda, and he has this line, she already has her knight in shining armor, and it's not me. And then he goes and saves her anyway. So I think that the movie, it has some really interesting messages about good for the sake of good. And, as Christ would say, like, do not all the publicans do the same, just being nice to your friends. And it's like, he knows that she doesn't reciprocate his feelings. She's not attracted to him, and he's going to save her anyway. And in the end, she's still not going to be with him. And he acknowledges that, and he does it anyway. And I think that that's really unique among the Disney movies. Most of the Disney movies, the hero saves the girl at the end, and then they get married. Or he'll stick up for the lady because he's attracted to her, which Phoebus does in the beginning. He'll do it for Esmeralda because he thinks she's hot stuff. But then we see him grow, and he does it for someone he doesn't even know. So Esmeralda does it, Phoebus does it, and Quasimodo does it. And then Frollo does the opposite. And he's like, I will burn this city to the ground for the one thing that I want. Yeah,
it's an interesting perspective for sure. So let's talk about, since you mentioned sensuality too, let's talk about, because to me, the movie has a mixed message when it comes to sensuality, because you have Esmeralda, who's dancing very provocatively. You have characters that are portrayed in a positive light because what a woman, and you have the character that's portrayed in the negative light. And, so it's like lusting is, so what does the movie have to say about lust, I guess, is the question. That, because that's the whole point of Frollo's song, is that he is lusting after. Is it just that Frollo sees that as evil, and so he can't deal with it? Or is it, and maybe Phoebus doesn't? Or is one kind of lust okay and another kind of lust not okay? Or, I don't know, like, what do you think? What do you think the movie has to say about that?
Yeah, this is kind of where I was going with like the Phoebus comments.
Yeah.
Because when he says, "What a woman," it's not in response to her dance. He says, "What a woman," when she handles herself when 10 guards go after her. And she's like, "Oh no, there are 10 of you, and what of me? What's a poor girl to do?" And then she does what a poor girl's going to do. And that's when he's like, "Wow." And he thinks, this is a great lady. And so I think that you see a growth with him that's very gradual. And then Esmeralda, as far as her lust toward him, I think is really interesting because she rejects him off the bat. Like, he's obviously this really, hot stuff captain of the guard and everything, but she's totally uninterested. She doesn't trust him. She wants him out of her face. She shows a warmer moment to him when he, defends her and says that she claims sanctuary. They kind of have a little moment. But she really changes her mind about him when she sees him save the Miller's family. And it's after that scene that she's like, "That arrow almost pierced your heart." And he's like, "I don't know that it didn't." And then they kiss. So what
Nice.
he gets rewarded for and what they fall in love over, I think is actually also better and less superficial than a lot of these other Disney movies that we have where characters are merely attracted to each other.
Interesting. Yeah, I can see it. It's an interesting perspective. I guess I feel like if they had, that's why I just wish I could get the R-rated version, because I feel like it would be so much more sort of, I don't know, like it wouldn't feel as maybe shocking because when he sings Hellfire, and that he's going to have this woman or she is going to die, that it wouldn't feel as sort of, I don't know, you'd feel like you knew all these characters better because you got a little bit more into kind of, it just could be more grown up.
Yeah, this is where I should talk about where I completely agree with you, and I think the movie, nah. Although it doesn't drive me nuts while I watch it, but I agreed with so many points that you made about the schizophrenic tone. And like, I think the entire movie would be better off if they did like a Jar Jar Binks cut and took out all of the gargoyles completely.
Yeah.
And it's funny because some people are like, "Oh, I think the gargoyles are the best part of the movie." But did you like the movie? Because everybody I hear who's like, "Oh, I thought the gargoyles were the best part," they're either 10 or they didn't like the movie and those were the only parts they liked.
I haven't met very many people who only like the gargoyles. So most people are sold, will sell the gargoyles. And so maybe we should talk about them. Because, of course, and we had in the comment section that, because my problem with the gargoyles is not as much that you have comic relief or whatever, because that's part of Disney, and I get that. But it does feel very tonally disconnected from the rest of the movie.
Oh, it's awful.
And like, because people will say, and people said in the comment section, "Oh, well, they really are like from Quasimodo's mind," but then that even to me is a problem, because if they are supposed to be the comic relief, which they are definitely staged and they're definitely selling it as comic relief, but if they are Quasimodo's figment of his imagination, then they are really sad because they keep convincing him to do all of these horrible things that make him very sad. And just the placement of a guy like you is so, I just think it actually is really mean. It's really awful. Mean. And it's supposed to be so goofy and so blah, 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 blah. And so, like, it actually, like, I don't know. You'd have to really stretch, I think, to say that this was some kind of, like, truly subversive thing on the part of the animators, that they put them in and they were really, like, Quasimodo's brain, and that it was meant to be this sort of dark take on Disney sidekicks or something like that. I think it's stretching. I think it's stretching to me. I think that they just lost their guts. They put it in there because they needed to have something for kids, and I don't know. So it frustrates me.
Yeah, especially a guy like you. As I was just watching it today, I was just like, the scenes on either side of that song.
It doesn't fit it at all.
Yeah, we have, right before it is when Phoebus saves the Miller's family and Esmeralda pulls him out of the water, and then Frollo says the line, you find her even if you have to burn this whole city to the ground. And then it goes ba-da-da, and it's all like, it cuts to Notre Dame and like everything's on fire, and then it goes to the Gargoyles singing, and they're like, the city of Paris is on fire this evening, or no, it's glowing this evening. Sure, that's because it's on fire, but still there's Lamo, and you're like, stop right now.
Because that's the thing about, like, say in Shakespeare, when you have comic relief, which he does in all of his tragedies, and something like Romeo and Juliet, and you have the little comic relief. And the thing is those characters are usually completely ancillary to the lead characters, and they don't actually sort of impact the story that much. Like, they provide these sort of breaks for the audience to breathe, but they don't actually like really interact that much with the main character.
Yeah.
So this in a guy like you actually have them convincing him that he's going to get Esmeralda in the end, and that he's going to, win, that he's this great guy, and that, she'd be lucky to have him and stuff. So this is actually the comic relief, like, making things way worse for the lead character than they would actually like otherwise be.
It's so clumsy. It's so clumsy. And I think one of my biggest head desk moment in the story is when they're at the climax and they're fighting this battle and everything, and then Laverne has got the flock of pigeons. Whoa, I'm pitted out. Oh, I get really excited about this. But Laverne is, she's like, fly, my prettiest fly. And I'm like, did you just throw an anachronism in here? Like, I can't with it. Oh, it makes me so mad.
Yeah, I mean, and that, like, again, in that, the finale, I guess, well, I don't want to talk about the finale yet. Let's wait a second. So, you're a mother. Yes. Like, do you think that this is too brutal for kids? Like, why did they even try to appeal to kids? Like, I just so wish they had the opportunity, they had the goodwill. Like, there was never a time, probably ever again in the history of Disney, where they would have been able to make a PG-13 true. The fact this got a G, like, forget that. If there's any proof that the MPA is total crap, that is it. This should not have gotten a G rating. But anyway, and like something like Inside Out doesn't get a G rating, and so this gets a G rating. And if they had just, like, you don't even have to do R-rated, but like, if they just not really tried to appeal to kids, like if they just had the guts to kind of do it, I think that there was never a time when they could have. I think they had so much goodwill, and it just frustrates me so much because, like I said, the first time I saw it was with these little, I don't know, they were probably 3 or 4, these little kids, these nephews, and I just saw it didn't engage them at all, first of all, and I was just completely appalled. And I was kind of embarrassed that I had like started this with these children, and I probably should have turned it off. But I was 17. What do I know? And so I don't know. How do you feel as a mother about something like this from Disney? Oh, I can't hear you. All of a sudden. Can you hear me? Here, try, see if I can. Are you talking? Let's see. Crap. Why can't I hear you? Shoot. Here, see if that helps. Ah, darn it.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay, I'll just take out the headphones.
Sorry about that.
Oh no, it's okay. Okay, yeah. So talking about it in terms of kids. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So like my 5-year-old has watched it. I think he watched it for the first time when he was 3. I think that there's nothing graphic on the screen. I think that any themes that wouldn't be appropriate for that age are just going to totally go over his head. It's not his favorite Disney movie, but he's sat down for it. I wouldn't say that he's totally disinterested in it. I think that I completely agree that the marketing was entirely confused. And I do agree that they needed to own it. They needed to own what they were doing. And I think that the crowd that they could have appealed to would be those kids that liked things like Nightmare Before Christmas, where it's not really heartwarming in your typical sense. It's got, a really different dark vibe to it. I think even like if they had just taken out the Gargoyles and had more of the same kind of humor that they had, I actually think that a lot of it is really funny. Especially right around the time where like Quasimodo is hiding Phoebus under the table, and Phoebus groans and he like kicks him, and then when he and Phoebus sneak out of the cathedral together and they're fighting over whether or not this necklace, or amulet, whatever it is that Esmeralda has given him, they're fighting over whether or not it's a map. And I just love the audio, like vocal acting right there. It's so fun, the way that they like interplay off of each other, and then they both come on the same note. It is not a map. And then Kevin Kline is like, okay, fine. If you say it's a map, it's a map. I think that kind of humor was really well suited to the movie.
That makes sense. I think it could have appealed to the same kind of kids who like anime, who like Studio Ghibli, who like that kind of, maybe that there's some darkness there. There's some, so I can totally see what you're saying. And I do probably, it certainly went over the head of the boys that I was watching that day. They, like I said, they were completely uninterested. And I don't think that every movie should have to appeal to every age group. I don't have a problem with that's, I think, a big flaw, of modern animation. This is just my opinion, is that every movie tries to be a family film. And including this movie. When it shouldn't have. It shouldn't have tried to be a family film. It should have just been a film for mature kids and adults. And then it would have been so much better. A movie like, this movie is a million times better than the Angry Birds movie, but the Angry Birds movie, it had so much, actually it had a lot of potential to be really funny, because there are funny stuff and there are funny people involved, and the animation's pretty good, but then it just throws in these adult jokes, and I hated so much. And this sort of weird message. Anyway, don't go on there, but I'm just saying, it's just an example of another movie. I can tell you how many animated films I've seen where I just feel like, boy, if you just narrowed your demographic and just focused on that demographic, and instead of trying to be to everyone, it would have been so much better.
Yep. It's that saying, if you try to please everyone, you please no one.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
It absolutely shot this thing in the leg. Yeah, absolutely. I as I have gone throughout my life proselytizing Hunchback, I've made a lot of people watch this movie. A lot of people have never seen it. And I remember one guy I was dating in college, I sat him down because he was into film and he was going into film, and I was like, you have to watch this movie. And because you're dating me, you also have to like it, which they magically all did. But he told me that when his mother and sister went and saw it when it came out, they walked out of the theater. And I don't think that they were the only ones. I think that it was just totally, like you said, it's surprising. If you brought somebody to it and you were not expecting that, it can be embarrassing. And just really, like, I think it felt really out of left field because of the way it was marketed. I think for me, and I didn't tell this part of the story when I was talking about how I first, saw it, but I first found out about Hunchback through the Disney Adventure magazine. And I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it was this little thing that I'd get in the mail every once in a while, and it would have comics in the back, and that was my favorite part. And before Hunchback came out, they did sneak peeks of the movie, and the art was all in the style that the movie was going to be in. And they had the scene, I remember reading, of Phoebus saving the Miller's family. And so I kind of saw that first, bonded with that first, and that's what made me want to go see it. And so I was like, Mom, Dad, like, we should go see this movie. It looks really cool. They're gonna burn a family alive. So like, I went into that movie even at the age of 11, knowing that this was going to be something a little bit darker, and wanting that out of it. So yeah. And what you said about anime kids, spot on, because it took me like 3 more years and I was into anime. And,
interesting. Yeah, I feel like a lot of Disney fans, I feel like, are willing to, are willing to forgive. I guess I don't really understand why, for most hardcore Disney fans, a movie like The Black Cauldron is at the bottom of their list, and they're really harsh on it. And then a movie like Hunchback of Notre Dame, which to me has some of the same strengths and flaws, is very frequently in your top 10. Like I guess I feel like a lot, not particularly you, but I feel like a lot of other Disney fans, they want to be known for, they love Disney, but they feel sort of embarrassed for liking Disney because Disney is for kids. Disney is child's movies. And so this is one movie where they can kind of say, look, I like a movie that's for adults.
Yeah.
And so I feel that makes them kind of, so they're willing to excuse a lot that I don't think that they necessarily should. And so anyway, but that's just sort of what I do think sometimes happens with this this movie particularly. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about Frollo.
Okay. Also, I'm going to try to plug my microphone back in. Do you think?
Yeah, give it a shot.
Worth doing.
It definitely was what made the difference.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay. I think I might have I probably played with my hair a lot. And because I kept worrying that my hair was going to be messing with the microphone and you'd be hearing like the whole time. Okay. So.
Oh, good. Okay.
I'll keep it on the other side.
My view on Frollo, I think he's a little bit overrated. Mm-hmm. People frequently have him as one of the best Disney villains. And I think that Tony Jay is very good in the vocal performance. And I think that he has a pretty good song in Hellfire. And I do. I think it's a pretty certainly well animated. Like, the song is with the monks and the all of that. It looks, or whatever, the choir robe things in the chapel. But I feel like he's kind of one note.
Yeah.
I feel like he starts out the movie as somebody who just killed a woman and is going to drown a baby, and he ends up, there's nowhere really to go from there. Like, how do you be worse than drowning a baby? Like, and by the end he's the same. Like, he's bad. And I guess somebody did make an interesting point about, like, is he goes to justifying his badness. But I feel like even in the beginning he was justifying his badness. Yeah. He was trying to claim why it was okay that he killed this woman to the Archdeacon, like why that these people weren't worth, these were trash, these were, this was a hideous baby, and so he could drown it in the well. And I don't know. I think somebody like Gaston is much more interesting because he starts out the town hero. He's everyone's favorite guy. Mm-hmm. And by the end, I mean, he just lets one person not liking him get to him and eat at him and eat at him and eat at him until he's a monster. And, he's this horrible person. And so I don't know. I certainly don't think he's the worst Disney, most one-note Disney villain, but I just don't think he's that much better than like a Clayton in Tarzan.
Yeah.
And people act like he's so much better.
Yeah.
I don't know. Thoughts on Frollo?
For sure. So first off, just on that opening scene with Frollo, watching it today, I was like, this feels so far out because he's killing this lady and he's like, it's not my fault. And yet we see that happen in the same justification, because when the Archdeacon is like, see the innocent blood you have spilt, his response is, she ran, I pursued. And how many people justify the killing of people today because they were breaking the law or were perceived to be breaking the law or were perceived to be suspicious, and then they're threatened, they run, and they end up dead. And the response is, well, they ran. I think that it's still a very topical presentation there. So yes, he's evil, but he's a very controlled evil. And I think that his justifications, while they're, sick, it still shows an adherence at the beginning. He's being contained. Like the Archdeacon says, raise this child as your own, and he does it. It says that he fears the wrath of God for the first time in his life, but he also has something of a reputation to uphold, where he has to at least appear holy. Like he makes this big entrance at the Festival of Fools every year. Why? Because he's got to represent the church. And so like he does a lot of the things that he does in order to appear a certain way. And so I would say that he's a very contained evil. I would say that he's representative of a man that is, that has begun to give in to temptation. But halfway through the movie, after he sings his Hellfire song, and they make this shift where he's like, okay, no, like find the gypsy girl. And then it escalates massively. And so like what he's willing to give up in order to pursue this thing that he wants, and what he's willing to cast aside and what he's willing to kill has escalated from one woman that he tries to justify killing to literally everyone that he's not even going to bother. He's just like, no, like just find the girl. And he's just like totally lost. And by the end of the movie, he has become so like, he has, become a monster, right? Like it even shows in his visage, and, the fires of hell are on his face and, in his eyes. And he just turns into this like bizarre, it was almost like a clown creature. And then it's very interesting that he essentially becomes the devil himself. In the beginning of the movie, he is a man who is tempted by the devil, who has given into the devil, and who is being led by the devil. But by the end of the movie, I really feel like he represents Satan incarnate. And then what does he do? How does he die? It's not just by falling. It's by trying to kill this innocent woman, and his sword hits the stone gargoyle that he's standing on, and he damns himself. Which I think is very thematically true to, Lucifer's own fall, and, this fallen angel, right, who essentially gave himself over to darkness, and then became subject 100% to it. So for me, like, I see an arc, and that's the arc that I see.
Interesting. I can see how you would see that, and I totally respect that. I do. I do.
But your point at the beginning where you're like, you killed a lady and you're gonna drown a baby. Where do you go from there? I'm gonna go with you on that one. You're right. Like, so that's the arc that I see, but I'm definitely gonna say that I'll give you credit for for that conclusion.
There you go. Yeah, I don't know. It's not that I think that he's necessarily a horrible villain. Like, he's not. I'm trying to think what's a horrible Disney villain. I mean, he's a lot better than, since I've been comparing to the Black Cauldron, he's way better than the Horned King and the Black Cauldron. Yeah. Way more developed, way more interesting. But I don't know. I guess where I feel in this movie is that I could get on here and actually do somewhat of a defense of Hunchback, like I did with Black Cauldron. If you look at, I get both the same grade. But I feel like people put it on this pedestal where people hate the Black Cauldron. If everybody was out there saying, like, Hunchback of Notre Dame is the worst movie ever made, then I would probably have a very different tone to my review. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, well, there's this good thing about it. And look, they tried to do this. And yeah, it was a failure. But I can see some ambition. I don't hate it, but I just don't vault it up like other people do. And so that's sort of the difference. I don't hate Frollo. I don't think he's horrible, but I don't think he's a top 5 Disney villain like I so often see listed.
Yeah.
So that's, I would put someone like a Scar. I would put somebody like even somebody like an Ursula or that I at least can have a little bit more fun with. Yeah. Maybe you don't see an arc as much with them, but like this just, I don't know. I just don't, like I said, I don't think he's that different than like your Claytons or your he's I'm trying to think other just sort of he's definitely better than the bad guy in Mulan. I like Hades much better than him because he's got a little personality, he's a little bit fun. And so maybe that's partly just preference, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't think he's horrible. I just think he's a little one note to be like one of the top 5.
I think that he's very different. Like, he's not compelling to watch in the same way that Scar or Ursula or any of those, or even
Maleficent
or Maleficent. Yeah. Those villains, it's like you can't get enough of them, I mean, like, every time they're on the screen, you're right there. And Frollo is not that way. I think Hellfire, it works for him, but I don't think that it's as compelling as even some of the other villain numbers, just because like Frollo's sinisterness is very covert, it's very hypocritical in a lot of ways, it's very real.
Interesting.
So I think I can see why it's just not as entertaining as a lot of other things. So yeah, like I think that in Hunchback he works for me, but as far as being compared to other villains, no, I wouldn't put him in my top 5.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, that makes sense then. All right. I think I only have one more question. So let's talk about this ending. I think the ending completely loses control of any sense of like we had been, we had been in this sort of grounded reality a little bit, and then we are like dumping rivers of molten ore out of the cathedral. What is going on? Where did that come from? Why are they doing that? And then you also have like really, I think, Home Alone style moments where you have characters getting hit in the groin and characters getting bonked on the head, and you see the birds and things like that. And and we don't know, even like they have this mass of people. Are those the gypsies? Are they the townspeople? Are they for Frollo? Are they against Frollo?
What's
mob going on? It's just so nuts. Like, it gets ludicrous. And I just think, like, boy, they just, I don't know. Like, they couldn't pull off the ending of the book because they hadn't established it hadn't been really enough about Quasimodo, and he wasn't the Archdeacon. So they couldn't pull off any of the book, and so they just, like, I don't know. It was just, I don't understand the molten ore. Explain the molten ore for me. Like, what is going on?
Oh my goodness. The ending, it is a disaster. So, it is a disaster. Like, I love that movie with the passion of 1,000 fiery suns, but that ending is a disaster. And it doesn't, I mean, even when like Phoebus gets up there and he's like, you know, he's persecuted our people, he's ransacked our city, and now he declares war on Notre Dame herself. And everybody's like, yeah. And it's like, did he? Because I bet if Phoebus was like, actually, Frollo really just wants Esmeralda, I bet everybody, you know, or if Frodo was like, actually, everybody, I just want you to like go get Esmeralda for me, they'd be like, serve her up, you know? I mean,
yeah.
They were going to let it
Well, I mean, because they were just about to hang her.
Yeah. Well, burn her. Yeah, they were going to, yeah.
Yeah, and burn her. That's right. I forgot about that.
Well, and so, you had the gypsies in all of these cages. And so, I mean, because like Frollo's point from the beginning is he wants to eradicate these people. And so like, that's his big goal. And he wants to find the Court of Miracles so he can round them all up. And he finds the Court of Miracles and he rounds them all up and he gets them in these cages. And apparently he's going to burn Esmeralda first, and then he's somehow going to annihilate them. I don't know. And the townspeople, they're just the mob. Like, the townspeople in the movie are just hilarious. I mean, even in the beginning at the festival, when everybody's like, hey, oh no, Quasimodo's hideous. They're like, oh, he's hideous. And then they're like, oh no, let's be friends with Quasi. They're like, yeah, Quasi, we love you. And then one of the guards is like, I'm going to throw a tomato at him. They're like, let's all throw tomatoes at him. It is the literal definition of mob mentality. Like, literally. Yeah. So that battle is the same way. They're like, we're going to fight the guards now, because like that's all that Frollo's army is really made out of, is like these guards, soldiers. I don't really know. Like, Phoebus's story makes more sense to me. I don't even know what all these other guys are doing here, but like Phoebus, they make reference that he's come back from the Holy Wars at the beginning of the movie. So like, he's a crusader. So like, his presence makes sense. And I like the intro that he has with Frollo at the very beginning, but how that works at the end, I don't really, I got no defenses for the ending of this movie. Yeah, really.
Oh, good. I'm glad you give me that one, because it's just, what is going on?
Yeah. Well, and I think that one of the weirdest parts about it is like, you could have a battle. You could do that. I could see it working, but this is like hyperbole, right? You know, where it's just like everything, everywhere, everyone's involved. You know what else? Okay, I got to throw this one last thing in. Yeah, they dump all that molten ore, like you said, or lead or whatever it is. And I like that one. I'm like, okay, well, you know, what do we have to protect Esmeralda? We've got this ore. And we've got this pot that's going to boil it. I don't know. Let's throw it over the sides. I'm like, you know what?
It's in the middle of a church? Why do they have that in a church?
I think it's because that's what they make the bells out of. It's like, that's what they make the bells out of. And Quasi's in charge of making the bells. I don't know. But the thing that bothers me the most about it is that the next morning, it's not there.
Right. Well, like, they'd be making a lot of bells. I mean, there is rivers of it coming out of each side.
It like never stops. I don't know.
And it's not like I go to a Disney movie for historical accuracy. It's just kind of like, okay, now we've lost all control at all. Like, this is, you know, because it's trying, I guess, where maybe I do kind of hold it a little, because they're trying to be supposedly so dark, and you know, it's just and I don't know, so it's pretty funny. I'll give you that. And it is so 1990s that you know, after Home Alone was so huge, like every movie had to have the character that gets bonked in the head, and, you know, and the character basically the equivalent of, you know, like in every single children's movie, because they were like, kids think that's funny. We've got to have that in every movie. It's like, kids think a lot of. It's like that Carl's Jr. commercial where it's like, kids like chicken nuggets, and then you see the kid taking the gum off of the bottom of the table and eating it. It's like, kids like a lot of things.
I haven't seen that, but that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that what I imagine happened there was I feel like this whole movie, there's a push and a pull between the people putting it together. I think that whoever came up with the fact that they wanted to do this, they were like, I have a vision. I have a plan. We're going to make this amazing movie. And I think that they would have wanted to make this movie that, you know, you're saying that you're frustrated you're not getting. I think that's really what they had in mind. And I think that the studio was just like, it's too dark, it's too dark, it's too dark. Pull it back, pull it back. Throw some anachronisms in there. Just like, and it was like Aladdin genie style anachronisms where it was like not even from the time period.
I was just thinking, this is the Batman v Superman of Disney films.
Yes.
It really is, I think. I think that's true. I definitely think that, and that's the same thing that happened with the Black Cauldron. The Black Cauldron is famous for Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was head of Disney at the time, or whatever, one of the heads. And he went into the editing booth and he actually like made significant edits to the Black Cauldron, and that's why it's a mess. And I haven't heard anything that dramatic with Hunchback, but I'm sure that happened. I'm positive.
It's just written all over it.
Yeah, that they had to, the animation equivalent of reshoots. You know, like it's just so obvious.
Yeah. So, but what I think happened with the ending,
they lost their guts.
Yeah. But what I think happened with the ending was I think they had that ending storyboarded and they knew they wanted it. Mm-hmm. And so the thing is because that ending belonged to, I think, a very different movie, it feels totally out of place and very, very sudden. Especially
because we just had Guy Like You not that long before.
So bad. And I think that, even if it wasn't even if they just made it more tonally consistent, I think that it deserved to be on the side. I don't think it should have been one of Disney's official, like, oh, this is our 34th animated feature type thing. Kind of like what they did with Toy Story. You know, Toy Story, it was like they were doing something new and they knew it.
Or Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, or
they didn't even release that under Disney at first.
Right.
They released it under Touchstone, I think.
Right.
And yeah, that would have been so much better. And so then they could have taken a little bit more of that risk. And I complain about, I'm not a fan of these Disney remakes, even though some of them I do actually like, but the trend itself I'm not a fan of. But if they said we're gonna remake Hunchback of Notre Dame, I'm first one buying tickets. I'm first one, because I think that this has tons of potential that they could make it so much better.
Yeah. And
so, that might sound weird to say, but I think that's the kind of remake you should make. I think those are the best remakes, is you take a movie. I was a fan of the idea of remaking Pete's Dragon, because I think that the original isn't all that great. I think it's okay at best. And so I'm like, take that idea of a boy and his dragon, make it new, make it, and go for it, as opposed to remaking Beauty and the Beast or Little Mermaid, which
yeah.
I'm a little upset today about Lumiere and Cogsworth. I don't know if did you see them? The new.
I don't really keep up with the new.
I'm very upset about it. I think they look terrible.
Oh no!
But, yeah.
Should I look it up right now or wait later?
But anyway, that's all right. I guess it's for another thing. But it could be great. But I think they look very messy to me.
That's too bad.
Anyway, so I think that this would actually be really good if they remade it. And they did a Broadway cast of it, and they actually took out Guy Like You. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Yeah,
I really wouldn't.
Have you ever seen the sequel?
If they had the guts to do it. I was going to actually talk to you about that, because the sequel is the worst thing ever. It is so awful.
Worst movie ever made. It is melt your face off bad.
Oh, it is. It is horrible. Like it doesn't even hold as much as I really don't particularly care for this film. That is one of the worst movies, not just animated films. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Yeah. And I would say that it is worse than Charlie's Angels Full Throttle, which is the second worst movie I've ever seen.
It's just so embarrassing. They have this character there's the villain that's so obviously like the gay villain. You have the overbearing message of the jewels within the bell, and like that anybody would put jewels in the inside of a bell, and that, you know, because there's beauties within, you know, it's like, oh my gosh.
And also, I mean, like the fact that the girl that falls in love with him is blind.
Yeah.
Like, okay, because you're so ugly, no one would have fallen in love with you unless they were blind. Wow, did we just say that? Did we just go really, guys?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah, that they have to,
because we all knew you weren't getting Esmeralda, so
right. And they give Esmeralda a little kid that's very annoying.
You know what, I actually can't remember a whole lot of the sequel. I just remember being angry for about an hour of my life.
It's the worst thing ever. Yeah, I agree with you there. If you look at, I did the top 10 worst animated films I've ever seen, and I think I got it. It's like number 3, I think.
I might have seen that.
Anyway, yeah, I'm with you there. It's really awful. We did have another quick comment from Caster Choice. Says, thank you, girls. It's been very interesting. So, yay. You know, I really wanted to do this because I'm always up for talking about movies, and I really do mean it. I'm excited when anybody is excited about film, even if it's not one that I'm particularly, and I'm always up for, you know, having a discussion. I think that we in the internet space, we think that you have to be on one side or the other side, and I think that's ridiculous. I can see good things about something that overall I don't think really works, and I can see you know, bad things about something I really love. So you can always have a discussion, and that is. I was really grateful that you wanted to do this, and I think it's been a lot of fun. So I hope you've enjoyed it.
Yeah, totally. Are you getting the same static that I'm getting?
Yeah, it just started. So
darn it.
So where can people find you?
Oh, the static's still there, so I don't think it's me.
Okay.
So people can find me on Twitter at MRSCTYLER. And I have a website, ChristineTyler.com. And on YouTube, it's YouTube.com/CTylerVision. That's CTYLERVISION.
Okay, cool.
So,
well, I will put that all in the description section, and yeah, start thinking about the next one you want to talk about. I'm totally up for it.
Yeah, for sure. I love that.
All right. Sounds good. Okay, well, thanks so much, and
we'll
talk soon.
Thank you. Bye.